Right now, I am in Montana at the site of the Battle of Little Bighorn. And in the last episode, we were talking about the kind of the lead up to what is going to become known as Custer's Last Stand. We're here with Jocko Willink and Leif Babin and the guys from Echelon Front, kind of picking this battle apart. And in that last episode, we talked about how Custer had started to divide his forces up and had sent a captain with 3 companies, a guy by the name of Frederick Benteen, to look for some smaller villages on this little side mission. Ended up being a complete waste of time. Well, as Custer and Reno are moving to the north to seek glory and crush Sitting Bull and this massive Native American village that he has along the Little Bighorn, well, Benteen ends up coming back here to this area and following along, behind Custer and Reno in what we now know as Reno Creek. So he finds the lone teepee that Custer and Reno had already found, and somewhere here in this valley, he gets a message from Custer's detachment that says, "Benteen, come on, big village, be quick. P.S. Bring packs." And what Benteen didn't know is that to the north, Custer and Reno had stuck their head right into a meat grinder, and the bottom was dropping out for the men of the 7th Cavalry.
What's up, guys? My name is JP Donnell. I'm the Chief Training Officer here at Echelon Front, and we are in Montana doing a battlefield review, one of the staff rides. And it's really cool being able to come and just see this this area from an actual perspective of being, like, as we call, boots on the ground in those different areas of the battlefield. And what I've really enjoyed about this is learning the different perspectives of this history, and just remembering how, we as humans and as people, we need to have an open mind to all the different perspectives and views of things that have happened. And we need to study history, but we need to understand that we can't just study history from one perspective. We need to get multiple perspectives from that history, from what's happened, so that we can learn. It's been, for me, very eye-opening to be here, and it makes me frustrated with myself that I didn't take a more vested interest as a student in high school to learn history and at a deeper level, but also to look at history with multiple perspectives to get a broader view. And it's really cool that we're able to do that here at Echelon Front. It's one of the experiential leadership training programs that we have, is being able to go to different battlefields and learn about what happened, what we could have maybe have done to prevent that, and what we can do in the future to prevent some of these mistakes, but then also being able to take all these lessons and apply them to our personal and professional lives in regards to our leadership abilities as humans, to make things better, to support the people around us, and ultimately help our people just be able to learn and grow so that we can accomplish the mission to go out there and be successful.
Of the treaty I talked about in '68, the treaty is no white person or persons shall be permitted to settle upon or occupy any portion of the territory, or without the consent of the Indians to pass through the same. That's what was told to the Native Americans in '68. We want no white men here. The Black Hills belong to me. If the whites try to take them, I will fight. Sitting Bull. This is a different dynamic of anything that the United States Army has ever seen. Other than if you've ever been down into Texas and you've read a couple of books, The Empire of the Summer Moon, highly recommend it. Some of those folks that are down there on the southern border of there, Custer and these folks have never seen anything like this with this kind of individual as the leader. That was quoted from Sitting Bull. So when you look out here of what's going to take place, he's now, remember when I talked yesterday about the relationship between Benteen and Custer? They got a really good relationship, right? They thoroughly love each other. Well, he's got a log train, so he's going to make a decision back there that he's going to move with himself and Reno, and he's going to take Benteen, he's going to put him with the log train, he's going to send him out and around to the south with the log train to move the log train up in, just in case if he's making an approach and they try to get out south, maybe he can swim out and around. Oh, we're seeing the deer. There we go. Yeah, got that. Picked up on you, what you're looking at. We're not in North Carolina. So when you look at the aspects of these folks, of where they're going to come into, he's going to make a move and he's going to come out of the Wolf Mountains, and Benteen, he's already split his force. So instead of keeping his force together, not knowing the exact numbers that are over there, but knowing that is a one big herd.
We've made our way up into the valley now, and we're basically following the same path that Reno and the 3 companies that he was commanding would have followed as they were moving up on Sitting Bull's village. And when they got right up to this spot, you can see there's a highway behind me that basically is following the same path as Reno. But when they got to this spot, there's a bend that was in the Little Bighorn River. It's an oxbow lake now. But Reno gets up here and probably started realizing that he'd maybe bitten off a little bit more than he can chew. He's got about 160 men with him. Each one of those men are carrying 50 rounds of ammunition. And they've just rolled up on a village of 8,000 people, 2,000 of whom are these battle-hardened Native American warriors. Here in this field, to the best of our ability, we are looking at things from the perspective of Reno and the companies of A, G, and M of the 7th Cavalry. And as I mentioned, the Little Bighorn River came out here and then it's going to curl back. And I mean, you're seeing the same thing that I am. Tell me what you can see around the bend. You can't see anything. Turns out what's around that bend on the southern part of the village was Sitting Bull and the Hunkpapa. Beyond that was the Minneconjou, and then the Oglala, and then the Blackfeet, and then the Cheyenne. So as they rounded this bend, I can only imagine that panic ensued. Reno orders his men to dismount. Now I mentioned that there were 160 guys. Well, when they dismount, somebody has to hold the horses. So that's going to reduce their fighting force even more. The horses are going to be taken back in this direction here to a grove of cottonwood trees. And something else that is making this even more of a disaster is that Reno is taking swigs from a flask throughout this entire battle. So he's most likely drunk during this whole thing. So companies M, A, and G would have deployed from left to right out here, and they are going to be fighting for their lives right here in this field. So these 3 companies aren't doing too bad at first. They're kind of holding their own. As a matter of fact, in later years, there was a woman who I think was in the Hunkpapa camp, but she was in the camp somewhere, said that if Reno and his men would have just stayed mounted and rolled right through the camp, it probably would have caused panic and caused, you know, everything to break down. But they've dismounted, they're holding their own. But then they start hearing like this screaming in the village, and they don't know what's going on. There's also dust that's being kicked up. They have these Native Americans that are riding their horses around, so everything's kind of obscured. And what they didn't know is that through the village, people were screaming, "Crazy Horse is coming." And coming right around the left flank was Crazy Horse, and he's going to hit them in the left. They're going to try and refuse their line, but it's kind of like that 72-ounce steak challenge, where you think you can handle it, but then you find out that you also have to eat a baked potato, and you also have to eat a salad, and some jumbo shrimp, and like 5 rolls, and you realize, oh man, we've bitten off way more than we can chew. And they start falling back and running for their lives towards the cottonwoods where the horses are.
You guys remember that shooting that just happened at Uvalde, right? Y'all remember that, right? Obviously, it's horrible, it's heinous, right? Almost immediately, a lot of people were like, bro, if I was there, you know what I mean? If I was there, you know, I'm one of those people like, oh, if my kid was in there, I'd freaking go down there myself. Like every single one of my friends said that, myself included. Like if I was there, Leif and I were on the phone 15 minutes later, like, can you believe this? This is why we trained guys to be able to deal with these situations. Like we had those conversations. But in order to do what Leif said, which is actually learn something, I started thinking to myself, okay, so imagine this. I show up to a building, there's a bunch of police officers there, there's a chief of police, and he looks at me and says like, hey, we can't go forward right now. What do? Hey, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what's going on. He's been there for 38 minutes or however long already, and I just walk in and just assume this guy's an idiot? Is that really what I'm gonna do? So it's important to say, oh, let me at least expand my brain so I can learn some lessons from it. Instead of just saying, that guy's an idiot. Okay, yeah, we can look back and reflect and go, that guy definitely shouldn't have had that job. But, okay, how were they trained? What made everyone else, what made 250 other law enforcement officers go, okay, I'll stand here too. Think about that. And we've seen it. Like JP, me, Steve, Leif, out on those training events where you think like SEALs would just be crushing the target. We've seen them all sit there like, hey, do you think they're over there still? Like we've watched them do that. SEALs. So yes, open up that mind so that you can actually learn some lessons. Otherwise, you won't get anything out of it.
So I've moved over a little bit to a little pocket that had a clearing in the middle of some cottonwoods where Reno's detachment was holding their horses. So again, Crazy Horse hits companies A, G, and M in the left flank. They start falling back to this position to try and get their horses and figure out what they're going to do. And it's just mass confusion. So Reno is here in this area, and he's mounted up on his horse. Next to him is Custer's favorite scout, an Arikara by the name of Bloody Knife. And as they're standing there, a bullet comes through the air and hits Bloody Knife right in the head, completely covers Reno in blood and bits of brain and bone, and he just completely falls apart. When you come to Little Bighorn, one thing that really kind of sets this place apart is that they have markers that tell you where different individuals fell. So a lot of these men were buried right where they were killed. So right here we have a marker for the interpreter guide Bloody Knife, who again, as I mentioned, was an Arikara Native American. It says he fell here June 25th, 1876, while defending the Arikara way of life. Bloody Knife was part Arikara and also part Hunkpapa, and there's another warrior here by the name of Gall, and Gall just made this guy's life miserable early on, and Bloody Knife had got into it with him and actually stabbed him. And when this raid is happening on this camp, well, some of these Crow and Arikara get into the camp and are killing people themselves. Like these are their enemies as well. And it's thought that maybe Bloody Knife was responsible, but him and some others, whether he was directly involved or not, got in and killed members of Gall's family, which is really going to get him fired up. But yeah, right here is where Bloody Knife was shot in the head. And then after that, Reno's going to completely fall apart. He gives conflicting orders. He tells men to mount up and to dismount and do this, do that, and finally just says, if you want to try and get out of here, then get out of here. There's no clear leadership here at all. And Reno ends up just bolting and getting the heck out of here and making it for a high ground across the river. And we have a few other markers here that show where some of the men from Reno's detachment fell. So you've got all these guys who are basically leaderless right now, and they're all trying to make a break for it. One was a guy by the name of George Hirondine, and he made it out, into the open ground, and then his horse got shot out from under him. He got up, was nearly overrun by about 20 mounted warriors who just swarmed around him, and then he ends up running about 150 yards to get back to the clearing. And when he gets there, there's a guide by the name of Charlie Reynolds, and Charlie Reynolds is mounting his horse and is getting ready to go out. And Hirondine tells him, he says, "Charlie, don't go out there. It's basically a death trap." And Charlie Reynolds either didn't hear him or just flat ignored him. And he made it out to right about here. So right over there is where Bloody Knife gets hit. And this is as far as Charlie Reynolds gets. And you can see his marker here. So his horse gets shot out from under him. And then he gets up and starts firing his 6-shooter, but is overcome and dies right around this spot right here. We've moved over a little bit. So here's the pocket that we were just standing in where Bloody Knife and Charlie Reynolds fell. And the company commander of G Company was a guy by the name of Donald McIntosh. And McIntosh, in all this confusion, had lost his horse. So he decided to just take the horse of a private by the name of McCormick, which probably seemed a little bit rude. The problem with McCormick's horse is that it was really slow, and McIntosh hadn't bothered to take the picket out that was, keeping the horse staked to the ground. Well, as he's riding out through here, he's dragging this line and this stake behind him. It's picking up sagebrush and it's spooking the horse, so he can't control it. And he gets right out to this point and finds himself in the middle of a swarm of these angry Native American warriors. There was about 20 or 30 that overtook him right here. So yeah, right here in approximately this spot is where Donald McIntosh fell. Here's another marker out here in the field to an interpreter by the name of Isaiah Dorman. So Isaiah Dorman was the only African American who was killed in the Battle of Little Bighorn, and something that's really kind of interesting is that he was actually married to a Hunkpapa woman. So the people in the Hunkpapa camp actually knew Isaiah Dorman. And the story associated with his death is about as brutal as it gets. So Dorman is mortally wounded out here in the field. And after Reno and all his men have evacuated, he's still laying here. And there's a woman by the name of Moving Robe Woman, whose young brother, 10-year-old by the name of Deeds, had been killed, and she is angry and has nothing on her mind but revenge. And she comes up to Dorman, who knew Sitting Bull, and they were supposed to kind of just leave him alone, but she's not having any of it. And he says, "Please don't kill me. I'm going to die anyway." And she says, "If you didn't want to die, why didn't you stay home where you belong and not come and attack us?" She pulls out a revolver. Her face is painted red, squeezes the trigger. The first round doesn't go off, but the second one does. Shoots him right in the head. And when they found Dorman after the battle, what had been done to him was unspeakable. You can look it up for yourself because it is bad. They found his coffee cup and kettle lying next to him filled with his own blood. And there were some other things that they did to him that was just nasty as heck. But anyway, here's the spot where Isaiah Dorman fell. So for the men in Reno's detachment who are kind of trapped in this pocket and trying to escape, they can't really go south because they're being surrounded. So there's just a panic. And earlier in the battle, they had looked up and they had seen Custer, up top waving his hat. Now nobody really knows what that means, and nobody knows exactly at what point in the battle it happened. Probably early, and Custer was probably just like waving them on and encouraging them. But anyway, they have one goal on their mind right here on June 25th, and that's get out of this pocket and get to the river, get across, and get up to high ground, and hopefully reattach with the larger body of the 7th Cavalry.